Big hello from Raleigh, North Carolina. Yes, I moved to Raleigh from Portland a couple of weeks ago. So now I'm doing my recording in Raleigh. So if you are ever in Raleigh, reach out to me. Let's have a cup of coffee. Today, I have a special guest for my podcast and also my video, B2B marketing and more. And this is a channel really about B2B marketing and everything that you can imagine. We'll talk about it. Today's guest is very special because he's actually made that transition, from a completely different field to the marketing side. So I'm talking to Jharry Guevara. Did I say that name correctly, Jharry?
Yes, Guevara. Yes, you said it right, Guevara.
Very good. Jharry, it's so good to have you. You helped me on a couple of things, especially on the marketing automation tool. And I use Zoho. I'm not affiliated with Zoho platform at all. They are not paying me to say this, but I'm using their tool actually for marketing automation and also for some other office management activities as well. And Jharry has been helping me on the CRM side of it. But Jharry has a very interesting experience, okay? So you are a certified Zoho partner. But can you talk to all of us what you did before you became a certified partner?
Thank you very much, Pam, for having me here. Before I was a Zoho partner, I had my business. It was like an automotive shop. It's completely different industry. It was more manual, and my business was just dealing with cars and motorcycles. So nothing to do with a digital business.
You own a car shop in Houston.
Correct.
For a long period of time.
Correct, yes.
And your passion still now is about cars.
My passion is painting, but I didn't really go into business for my passion. It was just mainly because something that I had to go ahead and do. So I never really followed my passion. I just followed what the market wanted me to be doing.
So you own a car shop, but your specialty is automotive painting. So you are actually a painter, especially a custom painting for the cars.
Correct.
Why did you make that transition? And why did you decide this is not something I wanted to do in the long term. I want to do something totally different. And why did you decide that you want to do digital marketing or marketing automation or CRM?
For me to be able to go ahead and scale, for me to be able to provide the life that I wanted for my family, I had to overextend myself and overwork myself. So I just didn't see a way for me to be able to scale in the way that I wanted to go ahead and scale. I structure my business in a way that I could be able to have nothing but contracts, and I position myself to be able to sell. Somebody came in and offered to be able to purchase my business, which was the contract and my employees that managed these contracts. And once I was able to go ahead and sell, then my opportunity was like, where should I be able to go?
And what's your next step?
Yeah, what's my next step? And I knew that the CRM or the business automation process was something that's very valuable, but I'm not going to say that I just woke up and I knew that was my passion to go ahead and proceed becoming a CRM automation consultant. It was something that I knew that my business was lacking a certain way. So whenever I had the opportunity to go ahead and sell, I kind of investigated more in the topics because I was in a position where I didn't know what I didn't know. So I started using that time to be able to try to figure out what was my next goal. So one of my decisions that I ended up trying to do was to be able to open a digital marketing agency, but it was at the end of the day something I really felt passionate about, and not in a way that I could be able to help businesses, because I really wanted to help business.
Yeah.
Whenever I found out about CRM, I realized that that's something that every business needs to be able to go ahead and use and take advantage of, but I was not in a position to be able to help anybody out. So that's whenever I decided to go ahead and just focus on me becoming the best person that I could have benefited myself. So prior to me selling my business, I knew my business had a couple of hiccups and things that I needed to go ahead and do. So I ended up working on becoming the person that I wish I would have had whenever I had my business.
There's one thing that you brought up, a very interesting point, and I want to paraphrase it. I've been working with you for a year by now, and there is a couple of things that made an impression on me. Number one is you always try to improve. And you and I are always talking about what books to read, especially the marketing books that we need to read. And you actually introduced me several books, and that was actually pretty good. And I always get the impression that you always want to make an effort to improve. And I like that a lot. From my perspective, to live in a current society, that we have to be continuously absorb and embrace new technology and new things that will come to our way. I feel that the ability to continuously learn is so critical and important as a human being in the current modern society. And you actually have that because you and I talk about it quite often. And it was like, okay, what can we do better? What are the processes we need to improve? And also what are the things or the skill set that we need to possess? And one of the ways to do that is actually by reading. And you introduced me several books. And there are a couple books that you were talking to me about. Can you also share with our audience? What are they?
One of the books that really drove me as motivation, and kind of it was a guiding stone for me through this whole process, was Be So Good That They Can't Ignore You. Within that book, it talks about the hours and time that you have to spend in to be able to become so good into a topic that people gravitate towards you because you're good at that one thing. And it takes so much time and effort to be able to grow to that stance, or to that position. And it's not something that you just out of a sudden grow with it.
I 100% agree. Yeah.
You have to work on that skill. So through this whole process, through this whole transition, I focus on that, and I realized that I have to continue improving myself until people start realizing that I was good enough for them to be able to find me or search for me. Prior to that, I had to continue improving myself. And I knew that the business would follow me and this new journey was going to just start putting itself together. But I just had to focus on myself instead of looking for opportunities.
You talk about that book. You need to be so good so people can ignore you. And I think there's a similar book is called Outliers, and it's by Malcolm Gladwell. It's talking about the 10,000 hour rule, which is if you want to be so good at something, you have to somehow invest 10,000 hours of your time. And that's probably about 2.5 to 3 years, right? Really, really honing that skill. So talk to us in terms of when you made that transition after you sold the car shop and that you made the decision that you want to go into the marketing automation and CRM. How do you go about determine which platform you want to be certified and what is your learning path to make that happen?
The thing that I think that people misunderstand that concept is that they view the 10,000 rule as for example, a specific topic. And I view it as, okay, I have to design who I want to be, and I have up those 10,000 hours to be able to become that person.
To make that happen. Yeah.
Yeah, to make that happen. And I have to go ahead and continuously work on that process and make sure that I get to that goal, and I cannot quit unless I have those 10,000 hours. So that allows me to be able to open up my mind and understand, well, this is not going to happen tomorrow. This is not going to happen next week. And it's not going to happen in 6 months. It's going to happen until I put those 10,000 hours. And there was many times that I would not enjoy my family or go out in the weekends because I knew I had to focus on those 10,000 hours.
You need to put it into the hours. Yeah, exactly.
There's no other way around it. There's no shortcut around it.
You have to put in the hours. There's no shortcut. There is no shortcut. That's one thing I want to tell all the digital marketers. Many of them come to me and say, you know what, can you tell us how we can do this fast? Digital marketing, you cannot do it fast. There's so many intricacies. And you and I work on just a nurturing campaigns. For example, that people subscribe to my newsletter. And we have 3 emails that we want to send out. How much time you and I just talk about the process in addition to a copy, right? Mm-hmm. What is the process? What that workflow will look like? Who should actually receive it, right? Mm-hmm. Going back and forth. That by itself, it's kind of like 2 or 3 months. Would you agree?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most definitely.
It cannot happen that fast, especially on digital marketing. It just takes time to actually do it. You know, my video editor currently is recording for me on our behalf Scott spent hours, countless hours to edit this video, for example. And there's no shortcut. You have to put into hours. There's not much to it. So I actually agree with you. And I also want to share with everybody who is listening, who is watching, that you have to put into your time. If you want to be recognized as the expert, right, for your field, for whatever things you want to do, you have to put into the hours. There's not much to it. But you also talk about sacrifice. While you are trying to learn, you are trying to possess that knowledge, there's the sacrifices you made. There's no weekend. There's no time spent with the family. There's stuff you just have to buckle down and you have to learn. And there's many times it's very, very dull. How long did that take for you to get certified with Zoho?
The certification process was a small little hurdle on a long journey, because prior to me even beginning this journey, I pointed out all my weaknesses that I currently, at that time I had. And some of them were even me being in front of a camera speaking to you. Like I wasn't able to do that. So I worked on that. I worked on my weaknesses. I worked on my communication skills, even though my current communication skills, not where I wanted to be, but it's a lot better than where I started. So I made a list of everything that I needed to go ahead and improve, and list of things that I need a very good knowledge of. And I just set that list. And that list was like 25 items long. And each item would probably take me like 2-3 weeks to be able to mark off. And it was just, and some items will create more items to create it. So that list became very, very long. So that whole process was probably, I want to say, between, I started seeing results probably a year and a half into it, but did not really see anything major till like probably 2.5 years into this whole process.
I hear you. So bottom line is, I think I talked to you about this a while back. You were talking to me that the whole process of making that transition as kind of like automotive painter to really like you can call yourself like a marketing automation expert and be able to go out there to acquire or to talk to a prospect. That whole process is pretty much like 18 to 24 months. And can you also talk to us in terms of during that time after you sold your shop and during that 2 years, did you work full time or do you just work on this full time? And how do you manage your finance?
That was a very interesting time of my life because I valued time more than the finance. So there was a lot of things that we had to downgrade. I told my wife that before that process even began, I told her that it was going to be rough and we had to kind of downgrade and kind of really hunker down and act like if I was going to school. Because in reality, there's not a school that kind of teaches what I learned. So it was very difficult. But at the same time, I told her that we have to go through this whole process with the
Yeah.
mentality as if I'm going to school, if I'm going to college and full time, because the more out, still keeping those 10,000 hours in mind, the more hours I put in, the more I start growing as a person. That was a very complicated transition. But after that, once I made up my mind, I started looking for side jobs, side gigs.
So, Jharry, let me paraphrase. Basically, the way that you manage your finance after you sold your workshop is you and your wife treated like you are going to school full time, basically with no income. So you are really managing your finance like a hawk. You basically said there's a lot of expenses we can cut. We are going to cut it. And on top of it, if you took on a lot of side jobs, sounds like it. And sounds like you also went back to the owner who bought your car shop. If they need any kind of side jobs, you kind of help him out. So you take on the side job to kind of get by during that 24 months. Is that correct?
Mhm. That is correct, yes.
Yeah. And I think that's a fantastic insight and also advice to many people who want to make that transition. I often inform and also communicate with the people that I coach that if they want to make a career transition, the number one things that they have to take a look is their finance, right? Make sure that they actually have a finance or they have money set aside to either support it or they have a plan in terms of what they're going to do to actually find additional funding during the time that they are making that transition that will alleviate stress. So I love that you share that insight with us. So you manage the finance, obviously, and you made an effort and you go all the way in. You go all the way and try to put that 10,000 hours and you learned. And so once you got yourself certified and you are out there, but you are not known by many, many people and you are brand new for this specific field, how did you get about going to leads and also customers?
That was an interesting transition as well too, because once I was able to reach the goal, I guess you could say, now the next hurdle was, okay, people are not just going to come to me. So
Yeah.
I needed to go ahead and actually work on improving my marketing, understand what marketing, how could I be able to go ahead and attract clients. And some of that knowledge came from me having my previous business.
Yeah.
So it was already embedded in me. But now this new digital knowledge started to be able to accumulate based on what I had before. And I was able to kind of take all that and figure out something throughout the way. And at first, I was not getting anything.
Trust me, I know. I was there. When you market yourself, you do whatever you have to do. And then you're like, there's no conversion. The conversion was zero.
Yes, correct. And there was many different things that I try to do and try to create or try to attract clients, and nothing was really working until like I kind of zoned in and try to figure out, okay, what's not working and what is working.
Yeah.
So I completely eliminated what wasn't working, because part of the problem that I found on myself is that things that actually work for somebody else might not work for me, but I focus so much time and try to make that work, and it just waste of time because I'm never going to make that work.
Jharry, I really, really love what you just said in terms of try not to emulate other people's best practices. I did the same thing when I started. I will read a blog post and I will read literature. And they did something, email marketing, best practices, and they talk about specific case study. And I was like, okay, I need to do that. And I would try just like you, Jharry, that for some reason it's not me. It didn't work for me. But I will make all the process to fit into that mode. And then I realized, you know what? It's not going to work. So I also tell my clients that go ahead and read about the best practices, but you have to think through what you have, what you are doing. Don't try to emulate, but take whatever nugget that might work and try it. A lot of time when you try it, you're going to see that it's not working for you, and then you have to try something else. I think that's the biggest takeaway in terms of digital marketing. You never know what's going to work, and you have to try it and then determine that and then retry it. Even something is working, like 6 months down the road, it may not work.
One analogy I like to look at it is almost like playing an instrument. You learn how to play the instrument by copying somebody else's notes. But after a while, you'll understand what is a good note and what is a bad note, and you'll be so good that you could be able to mix the notes based on your flavor. So that's the same thing with this whole journey, that you read the blog posts and you read those articles as a way to be able to absorb those notes. But essentially, you create your own rhythm whenever you understand those notes. And because you put those 10,000 hours behind it, you are well knowledge enough to understand what is a good note and what is a bad note and what will work and what won't work based on your style and practice. One analogy I like to look at it is almost like playing an instrument. You learn how to play the instrument by copying somebody else's notes. But after a while, you'll understand what is a good note and what is a bad note, and you'll be so good that you could be able to mix the notes based on your flavor. So that's the same thing with this whole journey, that you read the blog posts and you read those articles as a way to be able to absorb those notes. But essentially, you create your own rhythm whenever you understand those notes. And because you put those 10,000 hours behind it, you are well knowledge enough to understand what is a good note and what is a bad note and what will work and what won't work based on your style and practice.
We talk about how to get the prospects, how to get business. And you say initially you try a lot of stuff. You even do pay media, you do integrated marketing, you have the website up, you do a lot of stuff, you do SEO, but none of them work very, very well. At the end, you were able to get customers. What did you do and how did you make that optimization? What are the specific channels that you actually used?
Because I was going outbound marketing and I was trying to pretty much dress myself up to be able to attract clients. That didn't work. So then I focused and I realized I have to look for clients that are looking for somebody that does what I do. So at first I started using like Fiverr. I didn't think people that were looking for my services were going to be in Fiverr, but that opened up a door to be able to have me ask myself more questions and try to figure out, okay, if this is not it, then where else is there? So then my knowledge became more in trying to figure out where could I be able to find a bucket of clients that are looking for people that are ready to go ahead and hire me. And Upwork was a perfect platform to go ahead and start. That was my best decision that I ended up doing, just working on Upwork to be able to start getting my clients from the beginning.
I like that you making the transition, and let me paraphrase that again, is initially you tried to do a lot of marketing tactics, including paid. I know that you told me you did that. And that is really not going anywhere. And doing a lot of outbound marketing is kind of like you are trying to catch that wider net, if you will. You start looking at where are the people. You're able to find that platform, which is Upwork. And that actually people are looking for a very specific marketing help. And a lot of people actually are there and post their jobs. And then you apply for the job and you make that happen. Even with that, you go where the channel that you know people are looking for the marketing help. Even with that, the conversion rate initially was not very high. How did you overcome that?
Upwork was another challenge that I had to go ahead and kind of overcome. And I knew I was committed to be able to make sure that was going to be successful. And based on my knowledge that I've acquired up to that point, I was able to understand how to be able to market myself. I was able to go ahead and understand how to be able to stand from the rest of the crowd. But essentially, it started from the beginning that I had to kind of prove myself in that platform that I was actually worth what I was asking for. And I built myself up. And there's a lot of people that want to go into a platform such as Upwork and want to go ahead and from the start want to go ahead and start getting paid the money that they envision. Yes, envision. And that was one of my mistakes. But then I switched it around and I started from beginning. And I was happy that I was getting paid as much as a minimum wage person, but just to be able to prove my worth.
A lot of consultants, especially freelancers, they encounter a couple of things. Number one is they don't know how they're going to charge. Anybody who is listening to this podcast, please subscribe, please comment, and I will respond to your questions as much as I can. But in the meantime, if you are on your own and you want to do freelancer type of job and you want to determine what you want to charge, you can talk to me. I can tell you what people usually charge because I use different freelancers for different jobs. But the bottom line is you need to be comfortable in terms of what you think you should get. At the same time, you have to test your pricing. There's not much to it. You have to test it. So I really like that you share that with me. And another thing is, I know that you are continuously improving your communication skill in terms of verbal, in terms of written, and you try to also improve in terms of how you can enhance your skills to pitch. So what are the new skills that you want to learn in 2022?
The new skill that I want to go ahead and kind of learn is actually understand more in the API communication in the back end, how to be able to have softwares communicate through the API communication. I'm knowledgeable in, but it's not something I consider myself an expert just yet. And that's something I would like to go ahead and do so I could be able to start building out an app through the whole knowledge process, or actually help businesses that actually have an app to be able to help them configure that information. I know that might sound very exciting, but for me, in my point of view, that's very exciting to be able to try to learn.
No, it does not sound exciting at all. That just sounds boring. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
you know what? I'm going to learn to be a keynote speaker. Okay. You know what? I'm going to write a film script. That kind of thing, like you will get people's attention. But you were like, You know what? I'm just going to think about it. How I'm going to make the back end integration effectively. That's not exciting at all. All right? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Actually, that's very, very important. There's one thing. You brought up another good point that I want to share with everybody is to be a good digital marketers nowadays, you also have to be a very good project manager. You also need to understand your processes. The digital marketing is built on the solid foundation of the back-end integration. if your integration is not done, like if you cannot move the data from one platform to another, and you don't have API to integrate your data from one platform to another, literally you cannot track the performance of your marketing, period. So Jharry, even though I say it's boring, but it's absolutely fundamentally, utterly, completely essential and vital to understand and to have somebody like you working on the back-end integration with all the marketers. So that's a great skill. Trust me, boring as hell.
Yes.
I'm not going to pick on that, but it's wonderful skills to possess. And by the way, that skill is also indispensable. So that skills will keep your skill set and also be in the job market for a long period of time. The last question, what is your advice for people who would like to make that full-on career transition, like from one field to another field, but completely different field? What are some of the mistakes that you made you want to share with everybody that so they can avoid it?
This is not my first time ever transitioning into a different career, believe it or not. Prior to me having that business,
the car shop.
My car shop I was a commercial diver. I was a deep sea diver in Gulf of Mexico, and I worked there 5 years. Yes. Yes. So that was, I learned a lot of valuable lessons in life through that whole career change. And that's what helped me fund the business that I had, the automotive shop. There was a lesson that I learned whenever I was diving. And at this point, I was an underwater diver, so I was doing a dive, and this was the deepest dive that I had to do.
How deep? Share with us.
It was 165 feet.
Oh,
the
wow.
depth was 100. Yeah, it was 165 feet, and this was not gas. This was air. And what happens in air is that at that certain depth, air is almost like a gas. So then you start hallucinating stuff, but not to that point. But it's that dangerous down at that depth. Going to that depth, I knew that all the risk, all the danger that was waiting for me at that depth. And it was my first time ever being to that depth. The most depth I was able to dive prior to that point, it was 75 feet. So it was in that deep.
It's literally double that. Yeah.
Yes, it was double that. So I remember going in and going down, and there was a certain time that the ocean kind of turns black.
Yes.
And at that time, because I was a deep sea diver, I have like the whole setup, and I could be able to talk to the supervisor up, and they could be able to see my camera and everything. And they were telling me how the depths that I'm going down. So it started off at 10, 20, 30, and then it started skipping 60 and then 70. And I remember them saying 90, and 90 was like almost like a block of bricks that was landed on me, and I stopped. And through the whole process, I have all these gadgets, and they could see me diving, like going the depth, and they all of a sudden saw me stop. And at that time, they were like, "Are you okay?" But they didn't realize that I was like really going crazy. I was really freaking out. I was thinking how high that is. That's really high. That's really deep. And it's starting to look black and everything. So then I calm myself down, and I realized, you know what? I've been through this. I've practiced through this. I studied through this. I've been diving. At that time, I was diving for 5 years, and I had all this knowledge that accumulated through that time. So I knew what I had to do. So there was a clear path that I knew that I had to do. If I went the other way that I knew was not the right way, of course, danger was waiting for me. So that was a point that made me kind of be more brave whenever I took those risky jumps. And through this whole process, what I would like to go ahead and share with everyone is whenever you go through this process, create a game plan. And at one point, you're going to fall into that 90 feet that you're so deep, but therefore you're halfway there, and you have to realize, you know what, I'm deep inside, but I have this game path. All I have to do is just focus and stay on this path, and I know everything will turn out okay. And that's what I kept on telling myself, because there's times that just like how I was in 90 feet of water, it was just black. It just looked black, and it felt really bad. So I had two choices. I could be able to just calm myself down and keep on going down, or I could be able to go ahead and like freak out and completely ruin my career and completely probably even die because I freaked out, That's the last steps that I had to go ahead and that I could be able to freak out because it's just not healthy. I could literally die. But at that depth, once I was able to continue moving down on my own strength, it became easier and I felt more elevated and more powerful. And the best feeling was whenever I actually reached my goal. So that's the whole procedure that I endeavored. This whole process is this whole path. I guess advice I'll have for everyone is just stick to it no matter what. Just stick to it.
Bottom line is you are going to hit that mental block or the physical block and every step of the way. And you have to think through in terms of, okay, what can I do to actually overcome that hurdle, if you will. The biggest hurdle is probably somewhere in the middle. You're about to get there, but you are not there yet. And then you have to really think through in terms of what's your game plan. And also, what can you do? And also, I guess when you say calm yourself down, sometimes it's also self-reflection. You have to take the back seat and basically said, okay, I've been going this far, and this is what I have accomplished, what I have learned. Right? Let's think about it for this specific hurdle. What can we do or what can I do to actually overcome it? And sometimes you are right. It's that self-motivation. It's that self-talking. You talk to yourself. You can do this. You can do this. You can do this.
Most definitely. Yes, most definitely.
Manifestation, I guess.
And back to that point where I was in the water, I had no choice. I couldn't quit because I knew if I quit, my diving career was over. Like, that's it. My whole focus was to be able to just focus down and continue my mission.
Jharry, it's wonderful, wonderful to have you to share your journey and your experience and also how you make that transition. I think that's fantastic. All of us are in the process. Like, we are always thinking about, I guess, at every 10 years or so, like your 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. We are always thinking, okay, what are we going to do next? And there's a lot of self-reflection. And I know now in the current era, which is the era of the great resignation, a lot of people out of this pandemic are thinking like, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do my current job. I want to do something completely different. And we can work remotely. And we prove we can do that. And many people are really making that transition right now. But I love a lot of lessons that you share with us today. And if you are listening and some of the lessons apply to you, let us know. And also subscribe to the podcast and watch this video. Again, comment. Love to hear from you. So Jharry, thank you so much for coming to my show.
Thank you for having me, Pam.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Never miss an episode of B2B Marketing and More by following us here on YouTube and leave a comment while you're at it. You can also find episodes wherever you get your podcasts.